Chapter 5 of Recollections of the Civil War. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by John Crean. Recollections of the Civil War by Charles Dana, Assistant Secretary of War, 1863-1865. Chapter 5. Some Contemporary Portraits. Grant before his great fame. His friend and mentor, General Rawlins. James Harrison Wilson. 2 semi-official letters to Stanton. Character sketches for the information of the President and Secretary. Mr. Dana's early judgment of soldiers who afterward won distinction. Living at headquarters as I did throughout the siege of Vicksburg, I soon became intimate with General Grant, not only knowing every operation while it was still but an idea, but studying its execution on the spot. Grant was an uncommon fellow, the most modest, the most disinterested, and the most honest man I ever knew, with a temper that nothing could disturb, and a judgment that was judicial in its comprehensiveness and wisdom. Not a great man, except morally, not an original or brilliant man, but sincere, thoughtful, deep, and gifted with courage that never faltered. When the time came to risk all, he went in like a simple-hearted, unaffected, unpretending hero, whom no ill omens could deject and no triumph unduly exalt. A social, friendly man, too, fond of a pleasant joke, and always ready with one, but liking above all a long chat of an evening, and ready to sit up with you all night, talking in the cool breeze in front of his tent. Not a man of sentimentality, not demonstrative in friendship, but always holding to his friends, and just even to the enemies he hated. After Grant, I spent more time in Vicksburg with his Assistant Adjutant General, Colonel John A. Rawlins, and with Lieutenant Colonel Wilson than with anyone else. Rawlins was one of the most valuable men in the army, in my judgment. He had but a limited education, which he had picked up at the neighborhood school and in Galena, Illinois, near which place he was born, and where he had worked himself into the law. But he had a very able mind, clear, strong, and not subject to hysterics. He bossed everything at Grant's headquarters. He had very little respect for persons and a rough style of conversation. I have heard him curse at Grant when, according to his judgment, the general was doing something that he thought he had better not do. But he was entirely devoted to his duty, with the clearest judgment, and perfectly fearless. Without him, Grant would not have been the same man. Rawlins was essentially a good man, though he was one of the most profane men I ever knew. There was no guile in him. He was as upright and as genuine a character as I ever came across. James H. Wilson I had first met at Milliken's Bend, when he was serving as Chief Topographical Engineer and Assistant Inspector General of the Army of the Tennessee. He was a brilliant man intellectually, highly educated, and thoroughly companionable. We became warm friends at once, and were together a great deal throughout the war. Rarely did Wilson go out on a specially interesting tour of inspection that he did not invite me to accompany him, and I never failed, if I were at liberty, to accept his invitations. Much of the exact information about the condition of the works which I was able to send to Mr. Stanton, Wilson put in my way. I have already spoken of McClernand, Sherman, and McPherson, Grant's 3 chief officers, but there were many subordinate officers of value in his army, not a few of whom became afterwards soldiers of distinction. At the request of Secretary Stanton, I had begun at Vicksburg a series of semi-official letters, in which I undertook to give my impressions of the officers in Grant's army. These letters were designed to help Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Stanton in forming their judgments of the men. In order to set the personnel of the commanding force distinctly before the reader, I quote here one of these letters, written at Cairo after the siege had ended. It has never been published before, and it gives my judgment at that time of the subordinate officers in the Vicksburg campaign. Cairo, Illinois, July 12, 1863. Dear Sir: Your dispatch of June 29th, desiring me to continue my sketches, I have to-day seen for the first time. It was sent down the river, but had not arrived when I left Vicksburg on the 5th instant. Let me describe the generals of division and brigade in Grant's army, in the order of the army corps to which they are attached, beginning with the 13th. The most prominent officer of the 13th Corps, next to the commander of the corps, is Brigadier General A. P. Hovey. He is a lawyer of Indiana, and from 40 to 45 years old. He is ambitious, active, nervous, irritable, energetic, clear-headed, quick-witted, and prompt-handed. He works with all his might and all his mind, and unlike most volunteer officers, makes it his business to learn the military profession just as if he expected to spend his life in it. He distinguished himself most honorably at Port Gibson and Champion's Hill, and is one of the best officers in this army. He is a man whose character will always command respect, though he is too nervous about his personal renown and his own advancement to be considered a first-rate man morally, judged by the high standard of men like Grant and Sherman. Hovey's principal brigadiers are General McGinnis and Colonel Slack. McGinnis is brave enough, but too excitable. He lost his balance at Champion's Hill. He is not likely ever to be more than a brigadier. Slack is a solid, steady man, brave, thorough, and sensible, but will never set the river afire. His education is poor, but he would make a respectable brigadier general, and, I know, hopes to be promoted. Next to Hovey is Oosterhouse. This general is universally well spoken of. He is a pleasant, genial fellow, brave and quick, and makes a first-rate report of a reconnaissance. There is not another general in this army who keeps the commander-in-chief so well informed concerning whatever happens at his outposts. As a disciplinarian he is not equal to Hovey, but is much better than some others. On the battlefield he lacks energy and concentrativeness. His brigadier commanders are all colonels, and I don't know much of them. The 3rd Division of the 13th Corps is commanded by General A. J. Smith, an old cavalry officer of the regular service. He is intrepid to recklessness. His head is clear, though rather thick, his disposition honest and manly, though given to boasting and self-exaggeration of a gentle and innocent kind. His division is well cared for, but is rather famous for slow instead of rapid marching. McClernand, however, disliked him, and kept him in the rear throughout the late campaign. He is a good officer to command a division in an army corps, but should not be entrusted with any important independent command. Smith's principal brigadier is General Burbridge, whom I judge to be a mediocre officer, brave, rather pretentious, a good fellow, not destined to greatness. The 4th Division in the 13th Corps is General Carr's. He has really been sick throughout the campaign, and had to leave to go home several weeks since, but stuck it out until the surrender. This may account for a critical, hang-back disposition which he has several times exhibited. He is a man of more cultivation, intelligence, and thought than his colleagues generally. The discipline in his camps I have thought to be poor and careless. He is brave enough, but lacks energy and initiative. Carr's brigadiers comprise General M. K. Lawler and General Lee of Kansas. Lawler weighs 250 pounds, is a Roman Catholic, and was a Douglas Democrat, belongs in Shawneetown, Illinois, and served in the Mexican War. He is as brave as a lion, and has about as much brains, but his purpose is always honest, and his sense is always good. He is a good disciplinarian and a first-rate soldier. He once hung a man of his regiment for murdering a comrade, without reporting the case to his commanding general either before or after the hanging, but there was no doubt the man deserved his fate. Grant has 2 or 3 times gently reprimanded him for indiscretions, but is pretty sure to go and thank him after a battle. Carr's 3rd Brigadier I don't know. In the 15th Corps there are 2 major generals who command divisions, namely Steele and Blair, and 1 brigadier, Tuttle. Steele has also been sick through the campaign, but has kept constantly at his post. He is a gentlemanly, pleasant fellow. Sherman has a high opinion of his capacity, and every one says that he handles troops with great coolness and skill in battle. To me his mind seems to work in a desultory way, like the mind of a captain of infantry long habituated to garrison duty at a frontier post. He takes things in bits, like a gossiping companion, and never comprehensively and strongly, like a man of clear brain and a ruling purpose. But on the whole I consider him one of the best division generals in this army. Yet you cannot rely on him to make a logical statement or to exercise any independent command. Of Steele's brigadiers, Colonel Woods eminently deserves promotion. A Hercules in form, in energy, and in pertinacity, he is both safe and sure. Colonel Manter, of Missouri, is a respectable officer. General Thayer is a fair, but not a first-rate officer. Frank Blair is about the same as an officer that he is as a politician. He is intelligent, prompt, determined, rather inclining to disorder, poor disciplinarian, but a brave fighter. I judge that he will soon leave the army, and that he prefers his seat in Congress to his commission. In Frank Blair's division there are 2 brigadier generals, Ewing and Lightburn. Ewing seems to possess many of the qualities of his father, whom you know better than I do, I suppose. Lightburn has not served long with this army, and I have had no opportunity of learning his measure. Placed in a command during the siege where General Sherman himself directed what was to be done, he has had little to do. He seems to belong to the heavy rather than the rapid department of the forces. Colonel Giles Smith is one of the very best brigadiers in Sherman's corps, perhaps the best of all next to Colonel Woods. He only requires the chance to develop into an officer of uncommon power and usefulness. There are plenty of men with generals' commissions who in all military respects are not fit to tie his shoes. Of General Tuttle, who commands Sherman's 3rd Division, I have already spoken, and need not here repeat it. Bravery and zeal constitute his only qualifications for command. His principal brigadier is General Mower, a brilliant officer, but not of large mental caliber. Colonel Wood, who commands another of his brigades, is greatly esteemed by General Grant, but I do not know him. Neither do I know the commander of his 3rd Brigade. 3 divisions of the 16th Corps have been serving in Grant's army for some time past. They are all commanded by brigadier generals, and the brigades by colonels. The first of these divisions to arrive before Vicksburg was Lauman's. This general got his promotion by bravery on the field and Iowa political influence. He is totally unfit to command. A very good man, but a very poor general. His brigade commanders are none of them above mediocrity. The next division of the 16th Corps to join the Vicksburg army was General Kimball's. He is not so bad a commander as Lauman, but he is bad enough. Brave, of course, but lacking the military instinct and the genius of generalship. I don't know any of his brigade commanders. The 3rd Division of the 16th Corps, now near Vicksburg, is that of General W. S. Smith. He is one of the best officers in that army. A rigid disciplinarian, his division is always ready and always safe. A man of brains, a hard worker, unpretending, quick, suggestive, he may also be a little crotchety, for such is his reputation, but I judge that he only needs the opportunity to render great services. What his brigade commanders are worth I can't say, but I am sure they have a first-rate schoolmaster in him. I now come to the 17th Corps and to its most prominent division general, Logan. This is a man of remarkable qualities and peculiar character. Heroic and brilliant, he is sometimes unsteady. Inspiring his men with his own enthusiasm on the field of battle, he is splendid in all its crash and commotion, but before it begins he is doubtful of the result, and after it is over he is fearful we may yet be beaten. A man of instinct and not of reflection, his judgments are often absurd, but his extemporaneous opinions are very apt to be right. Deficient in education, he is full of generous attachments and sincere animosities. On the whole, few can serve the cause of the country more effectively than he, and none serve it more faithfully. Logan's oldest brigade commander is General John D. Stevenson, of Missouri. He is a person of much talent, but a grumbler. He was one of the oldest colonels in the volunteer service, but because he had always been an anti-slavery man, all the others were promoted before him. This is still one of his grounds for discontent, and in addition younger brigadiers have been put before him since. Thus the world will not go to suit him. He has his own notions, too, of what should be done on the field of battle, and General McPherson has twice during this campaign had to rebuke him very severely for his failure to come to time on critical occasions. Logan's 2nd Brigade is commanded by General Leggett of Ohio. This officer has distinguished himself during the siege, and will be likely to distinguish himself hereafter. He possesses a clear head, an equable temper, and great propulsive power over his men. He is also a hard worker, and whatever he touches goes easily. The 3rd Brigade of this division has for a short time been commanded by Colonel Force. I only know that Logan, McPherson, and Grant all think well of him. Next in rank among McPherson's division generals is MacArthur. He has been in the reserve throughout the campaign, and has had little opportunity of proving his mettle. He is a shrewd, steady Scotchman, trustworthy rather than brilliant, good at hard knocks, but not a great commander. Two of his brigadiers, however, have gained very honorable distinction in this campaign, namely Crocker, who commanded Quinby's division at Port Gibson, Raymond, Jackson, and Champion's Hill, and Ransom. Crocker was sick throughout, and as soon as Quinby returned to his command had to go away, and it is feared may never be able to come back. He is an officer of great promise and remarkable power. Ransom has commanded on McPherson's right during the siege, and has exceeded every other brigadier in the zeal, intelligence, and efficiency with which his siege works were constructed and pushed forward. At the time of the surrender his trenches were so well completed that the engineers agreed that they offered the best opportunity in the whole of our lines for the advance of storming columns. Captain Comstock told me that 10,000 men could there be marched under cover up to the very lines of the enemy. In the assault of May 22nd, Ransom was equally conspicuous for the bravery with which he exposed himself. No young man in all this army has more future than he. The 3rd Brigade of MacArthur's division, that of General Reed, has been detached during the campaign at Lake Providence and elsewhere, and I have not been able to make General R.'s acquaintance. The 3rd Division of the 17th Corps was commanded during the first of the siege by General Quinby. This officer was also sick, and I dare say did not do justice to himself. A good commander of a division he is not. though he is a most excellent and estimable man, and seemed to be regarded by the soldiers with much affection. But he lacks order, system, command, and is the very opposite of his successor, General John E. Smith, who, with much less intellect than Quinby, has a great deal better sense, with a firmness of character, a steadiness of hand, and a freedom from personal irritability and jealousy, which must soon produce the happiest effect upon the division. Smith combines with these natural qualities of a soldier and commander a conscientious devotion not merely to the doing, but also to the learning of his duty, which renders him a better and better general each day. He is also fit to be entrusted with any independent command where judgment and discretion are as necessary as courage and activity, for in him all these qualities seem to be happily blended and balanced. Of General Matthias, who commands the brigade in this division so long and so gallantly commanded by the late Colonel Boomer, I hear the best accounts, but do not know him personally. The medical inspector tells me that no camps in the lines are kept in so good condition as his, and General Sherman, under whom he lately served, speaks of him as a very valuable officer. The second brigade is commanded by Colonel Sanborn, a steady, mediocre sort of man. The third by Colonel Holmes, whom I don't know personally, but who made a noble fight at Champion's Hill and saved our center there from being broken. General Herron's division is the newest addition to the forces under Grant, except the Ninth Corps, of which I know nothing except that its discipline and organization exceed those of the Western troops. Herron is a driving, energetic sort of young fellow, not deficient either in self-esteem or in common sense, and, as I judge, hardly destined to distinctions higher than those he has already acquired. Of his two brigadiers, Van Dever has not proved himself of much account during the siege. Orme I have seen, but do not know. Herron has shown a great deal more both of capacity and force than either of them, but he is not the first great requisite of a soldier, obedience to orders, and believes too much in doing things his own way. Thus, for 10 days after he had taken his position, he disregarded the order properly to picket the bottom between the bluff and the river on his left. He had made up his own mind that nobody could get out of the town by that way, and accordingly neglected to have the place thoroughly examined in order to render the matter clear and certain. Presently Grant discovered that men from the town were making their escape through that bottom, and then a more peremptory command to Herron set the matter right by the establishment of the necessary pickets. I must not omit a general who formerly commanded a brigadier in Logan's division, and has for some time been detached to a separate command at Milliken's Bend. I mean General Dennis. He is a hard-headed, hard-working, conscientious man, who never knows when he is beaten, and consequently is very hard to beat. He is not brilliant, but safe, sound, and trustworthy. His predecessor in that command, General Sullivan, has for some time been at Grant's headquarters, doing nothing with more energy and effect than he would be likely to show in any other line of duty. He is a gentlemanly fellow, intelligent, a charming companion, but heavy, jovial and lazy. I might write another letter on the staff officers and staff organization of Grant's army, should you desire it. Yours faithfully, C. A. Dana. Copy to Mr. Stanton. The day after sending to Mr. Stanton this letter on the generals of divisions and of brigades in the army which besieged Vicksburg, I wrote him another on the staff officers of the various corps. Like its predecessor, this letter has never appeared in the records of the war. Cairo, Illinois, July 13, 1863. Dear Sir, in my letter of yesterday I accidentally omitted to notice General C. C. Washburn among the generals of division in Grant's army. He is now in command of two of the divisions detached from the 16th Army Corps, namely that of Kimball and that of W. S. Smith, and, as I happen to know, is anxious to be put in command of an army corps, for which purpose it has been suggested that a new corps might be created out of these two divisions, with the addition of that of Lauman, also detached from the 16th, or that of Huron. But I understand from General Grant that he is not favorable to any such arrangement. Washburn being one of the very youngest in rank of his major generals, he intends to put him in command of a single division as soon as possible, in order that he may prove his fitness for higher commands by actual service, and give no occasion for older soldiers to complain that he was promoted without regard to his merits. I know Washburn very well, both as a politician and a military man, and I say frankly that he has better qualities for the latter than for the former function. He is brave, steady, respectable, receives suggestions and weighs them carefully, is not above being advised, but acts with independence nevertheless. His judgment is good, and his vigilance sufficient. I have not seen him in battle, however, and cannot say how far he holds his mind there. I don't find in him, I am sorry to say, that effort to learn the military art which every commander ought to exhibit, no matter whether he has received a military education or not. Washburn's whole soul is not put into the business of arms, and for me that is an unpardonable defect. But he is a good man, and above the average of our generals, at least of those in Grant's command. I now come to the staff organization and staff officers in this army, beginning of course with those connected with the head of the department. Grant's staff is a curious mixture of good, bad, and indifferent. As he is neither an organizer nor a disciplinarian himself, his staff is naturally a mosaic of accidental elements and family friends. It contains 4 working men, 2 whom are able to accomplish their duties without much work, and several who either don't think of work or who accomplish nothing, no matter what they undertake. Lieutenant Colonel Rawlins, Grant's assistant adjutant general, is a very industrious, conscientious man, who never loses a moment and never gives himself any indulgence except swearing and scolding. He is a lawyer by profession, a townsman of Grant's, and has a great influence over him, especially because he watches him day and night, and whenever he commits the folly of tasting liquor, hastens to remind him that at the beginning of the war he gave him, Rawlins, his word of honor not to touch a drop as long as it lasted. Grant thinks Rawlins a first-rate adjutant, but I think this is a mistake. He is too slow, and can't write the English language correctly without a great deal of careful consideration. Indeed, illiterateness is a general characteristic of Grant's staff, and in fact of Grant's generals and regimental officers of all ranks. Major Bowers, judge advocate of Grant's staff, is an excellent man and always finds work to do. Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, Inspector General, is a person of similar disposition. He is a captain of engineers in the regular army, and has rendered valuable services in that capacity. The fortification of Haynes' Bluff were designed by him and executed under his direction. His leading idea is the idea of duty, and he applies it vigorously and often impatiently to others. In consequence, he is unpopular among all who like to live with little work, but he has remarkable talents and uncommon executive power, and will be heard from hereafter. The quartermaster's department is under charge of Lieutenant Colonel Bingham, who is one of those I spoke of as accomplishing much with little work. He is an invalid almost, and I have never seen him when he appeared to be perfectly well. But he is a man of first-rate abilities and solid character, and, barring physical weakness, up to greater responsibilities than those he now bears. The chief commissary, Lieutenant Colonel McFeely, is a jolly, agreeable fellow, who never seems to be at work, but I have heard no complaints of deficiencies in his department. On the contrary, it seems to be one of the most efficacious parts of this great machine. Lieutenant Colonel Kent, Provost Marshal General, is a very industrious and sensible man, a great improvement on his predecessor, Colonel Hillier, who was a family and personal friend of Grant's. There are two aides de camp with the rank of colonel, namely Colonel A and Colonel B, both personal friends of Grant's. A is a worthless, whiskey-drinking, useless fellow. B is decent and gentlemanly, but neither of them is worth his salt so far as service to the government goes. Indeed, in all my observation I have never discovered the use of Grant's aides de camp at all. On the battlefield he sometimes sends orders by them, but everywhere else they are idle loafers. I suppose the army would be better off if they were all suppressed, especially the colonels. Grant has three aides with the rank of captain. Captain C is a relative of Mrs. Grant. He has been a stage driver and violates English grammar at every phrase. He is of some use, for he attends to the mails. Captain D is an elegant young officer of the regular cavalry. He rides after the general when he rides out. The rest of the time he does nothing at all. Captain Badeau, wounded at Port Hudson since he was attached to Grant's staff, has not yet reported. I must not omit the general medical staff of this army. It is in bad order. Its head, Dr. Mills, is impracticable, earnest, quarrelsome. He was relieved several weeks since, but Grant likes him and kept him on till the fall of Vicksburg. In this he was right, no doubt, for a change during the siege would have been troublesome. The change, I presume, will now be made. It must be for the better. The office of Chief of Artillery on the general staff I had forgotten, as well as that of Chief Engineer. The former is occupied by Lieutenant Colonel Duff, of the 2nd Illinois Artillery. He is unequal to the position, not only because he is disqualified by sickness, but because he does not sufficiently understand the management of artillery. The siege suffered greatly from his incompetence. General Grant knows, of course, that he is not the right person, but it is one of his weaknesses that he is unwilling to hurt the feelings of a friend, and so he keeps him on. The chief engineer, Captain Comstock, is an officer of great merit. He has, too, what his predecessor, Captain Prime, lacked, a talent for organization. His accession to the army will be the source of much improvement. If General Grant had about him a staff of thoroughly competent men, disciplinarians and workers, the efficiency and fighting quality of his army would soon be much increased. As it is, things go too much by hazard and by spasms, or, when the pinch comes, Grant forces through, by his own energy and main strength, what proper organization and proper staff officers would have done already. The staff of the 13th Corps was formed by General McClernand. The acting adjutant general, Lieutenant Colonel Skates, is a man of about 55 or 60 years old. He is a judge in Illinois, and left an honored and influential social position to serve in the army. General Ord speaks in high terms of him as an officer. The chief of artillery, Colonel F., is an ass. The general quartermaster, Lieutenant Colonel G., General McClernand's father-in-law, lately resigned his commission. He is incompetent. His successor has not yet been appointed. The chief commissary, Lieutenant Colonel H., is a fussy fellow who with much show accomplishes but little. General McClernand's aides went away with him or are absent on leave. Not a man of them is worth having. The engineer on his staff, Lieutenant Haynes, is an industrious and useful officer. The medical director, Dr. Hammond, has just been appointed. In the 15th Corps staff, all have to be working men, for Sherman tolerates no idlers and finds something for everybody to do. If an officer proves unfit for his position, he shifts him to some other place. Thus his adjutant, Lieutenant Colonel Hammond, a restless Kentuckian, kept everything in a row as long as he remained in that office. Sherman has accordingly made him Inspector General, and during the last 2 months has kept him constantly employed on scouting parties. In his place as adjutant is Captain Sawyer, a quiet, industrious, efficient person. The Chief of Artillery, Major Taylor, directed by Sherman's omnipresent eye and quick judgment, is an officer of great value, though under another general he might not be worth so much. The Chief Engineer, Captain Pitzman, wounded about July 15, is a man of merit, and his departure was a great loss to the regular ranks. General Sherman has 3 aides de camp, Captain McCoy, Captain Dayton, and Lieutenant Hill, and, as I have said, neither of them holds a sinecure office. His medical director, Dr. McMillan, is a good physician. I believe he has been in a constant contention with Dr. Mills. The quartermaster, Lieutenant Colonel J. C. Smith, is a most efficient officer. He has been doing duty as commissary also. On the whole, General Sherman has a very small and very efficient staff, but the efficiency comes mainly from him. What a splendid soldier he is! The staff of the 17th Army Corps is the most complete, the most numerous, and in some respects the most serviceable in this army. The Adjutant General, Lieutenant Colonel Clark, is a person of uncommon quickness, is always at work, and keeps everything in his department in first-rate order. The Inspector General, Lieutenant Colonel Strong, does his duties with promptness and thoroughness. His reports are models. The Chief of Artillery, Lieutenant Colonel Powell, thoroughly understands his business and attends to it diligently. The Provost Marshal General, Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, is a judicious and industrious man. Both the quartermaster and commissary are new men, captains, and I do not know them, but McPherson speaks highly of them. The medical director, Dr. Boucher, has the reputation of keeping his hospitals in better order and making his reports more promptly and satisfactorily than any other medical officer in this army. General McPherson has 4 aides de camp, Captain Steele, Captain Gile, Captain Knox, and Lieutenant Verney. The last of these is the best, and Captain Steele is next to him. The engineer officer, Captain Hickenlooper, is a laborious man, quick, watchful, but not of great capacity. The picket officer, Major Willard, whom I accidentally named last, is a person of unusual merit. In the staffs of the division and brigadier generals, I do not now recall any officer of extraordinary capacity. There may be such, but I have not made their acquaintance. On the other hand, I have made the acquaintance of some who seemed quite unfit for their posts. I must not omit, however, to speak here of Captain Trezilian, engineer on the staff of Major General Logan. His general services during the siege were not conspicuous, but he deserves great credit for constructing the wooden mortars which General McPherson used near its close with most remarkable effect. Both the idea and the work were Trezilian's. Very possibly you may not wish to go through this mass of details respecting so many officers of inferior grades, upon which claims you may never be called to pass judgment. But if you care to read them, here they are. I remain, dear sir, yours very faithfully, C. A. Dana. Copy to Mr. Stanton. End of chapter 5. Recording by John Crean, Lilburn, Georgia.